And the final highlight, or should that be low light, is when Bret Baier asked Kamala when she finally noticed that Joe Biden had some issues with cognitive decline. She is momentarily speechless.
You call Donald Trump, he's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
Then why are you the presidential candidate? None of it makes any sense.
Hello, everyone. J.R. Dukes at your service again. Appreciate all my free-minded friends joining me. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Well, what do you think about that Kamala Harris interview on Fox News yesterday? Quite interesting, right? My friends, I'm telling you, this interview is the end, the absolute end to Kamala Harris's campaign. What a terrible interview. Anybody that watches that with a clear, or as I like to call it, a free mind knows it was a unmitigated disaster for Kamala Harris. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what the news, the legacy media, if you will, has to say about this particular interview last night.
The reality is she's just now doing this. I told the former congressman, if I were advising the vice president, I would not have advised this unless my internals suggested that I was in trouble. You're looking to appeal to, I assume, some maybe moderate leaning Republicans, maybe some Republicans who aren't necessarily tied to the former president. I don't think she's persuaded them, Aaron, to vote for her in this debate. Her answers on immigration, she said, well, Donald Trump tanked the bill. Let's say you believe that. And Bret Baier said, but what about the first 2 years, where in the first 2 years you had the highest crossings of illegal crossings into the country? And then she said, but Donald Trump, she didn't answer. He then asked, well, what about your position on supporting taxpayer dollars for gender transition for those detained, migrants, that is? She said, well, Donald Trump had a similar law when he was president. Bret said, okay, that's fair, Madam Vice President, but it didn't occur under the Trump administration. What about your position? She didn't answer it. There were a lot of unanswered questions. I'll give her credit. She was stern. She was firm in her defense of her positions. But in terms of persuading conservatives or Republican-minded voters, I'm just not convinced she did it.
After watching this debate, you have to ask yourself, why would she do this debate? Why would she bother sitting down with Fox News? Let's be honest about it. She has done everything in her power not to talk to any type of conservative reporter, period. Up until this interview, she has effectively adopted Joe Biden's strategy from 2020, in which he effectively just hid in a basement. Now, it did work for him. I don't believe it's going to work for her. I think the real reason she went ahead and had this particular debate is because she knows what we all know, and that is Donald Trump is winning. His polling so far, that we'll talk about in another interview, is the best that Donald Trump has ever polled. And I'm including 2016 and 2020 polling in that statement. Fantastic news for Donald Trump, not good news if you're Kamala Harris. It's interesting that most of her answers, she always went ahead and took the opportunity to switch to Donald Trump. Almost all of her answers involved Donald Trump. Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. She is so rehearsed. She has to stick to the only talking point she has. This is one of the major criticisms of her. She's not able to sit down and talk with people. Do you know in this interview, Fox News was limited to originally 30 minutes, and then they cut it back 20 minutes to have an interview? Clearly, she just wanted to be able to check the box that says, hey, I sat down with Fox News. But just don't take my word for it. Even Geraldo Rivera, who used to be a great friend of former President Donald Trump, unbelievably, he is now supporting Kamala Harris, but he was on News Nation, and he was not happy at all with Kamala Harris's performance. Let's take a peek.
I'm not a politician. I'm not an expert in this, but I know a thing or two about debates, and it just seems to me that she missed an opportunity. Her briefers did, And from this moment on, I advise them to not be the doormat when it comes to this issue. It is their biggest Achilles heel. There's no doubt about it. If Donald Trump wins, it will be largely because of the immigration issue and the fact that Democrats not only blew the reality on the border over the last 3+ years, but they don't know how to respond to it, I think is malpractice.
Have you noticed a theme with the mainstream news? I don't care if it's the ladies on The View or if you're watching CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox News for that matter. Everybody knows the truth, and that is Donald Trump is doing fantastic, and in all likelihood, he's going to win this presidential election coming up. And that's what you hear Rivaldo Rivera saying, effectively, hey, it looks like Donald Trump's going to win, and when he wins, here's one of the main reasons he won. And effectively, Kamala Harris is a terrible, terrible candidate. Let's call it what it is. They went ahead and had a coup against Joe Biden. They didn't like his polling numbers. They threw him out, and now they replaced him with someone even worse. Kamala Harris has no ability to speak, at least unscripted. She has no charisma. Donald Trump will sit down for hours and hours and talk to whomever, effectively whenever. Yet you won't hear that from the legacy media. They always try to paint Donald Trump as out of touch, that he has some type of mental cognitive defect. And clearly that's not the case. That's not what is going on. Common sense tells us that when a candidate has nothing more to say other than don't vote for the other person because that person is terrible, this nonsense about a existential threat, the end of democracy, folks, this will not work. It does not work. It's like what we have heard for many years from James Carville. And of course, he was the original campaign manager for former President Bill Clinton. And he said perfectly and plainly, it's the economy, stupid. And that's exactly what it is, ladies and gentlemen, the economy. In the words of Ronald Reagan, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And in this particular presidential election, everybody knows the truth. No matter what the legacy media tries to tell us, we know prices are through the roof. We knew gasoline is way more expensive than what it was under Donald Trump. There are wars all around the world. And effectively, we have a socialist running to be president of the United States. The Democratic Party, ladies and gentlemen, has lost their way. They are no longer the party of Bill Clinton. They are definitely not the party of JFK. It is a completely different party, and everybody knows it. And it is shocking to me how there's not more people calling out the obvious. Effectively, the Democrats are telling each and every one of us, don't believe your lying eyes. We know what's best for you. We know how to run your life from cradle to grave, and you can trust us. And anytime you hear the government saying, hey, I'm the government and I'm here to help you, you better run because you are about to get screwed. Even MSNBC is having a very hard day today in the wake of the Kamala Harris interview.
It goes without saying that Donald Trump would not be given the same treatments, talked over, not allowed to finish those questions. It doesn't mean the topics weren't fair. There was a lot in there that viewers wanted to hear from Kamala Harris. Why do you have different positions now than you did in 2019? How are you going to fix the immigration crisis? All fair questions, but Donald Trump obviously would never be treated that way on Fox News.
No, not by, I mean, I've watched Brett Breyer for years. That's just, that was different. I think another great place to focus would be with the enemy from within comments that President Trump made. You see, that's the exact phrase Trump used a number of times in recent days, referring to his political adversaries and members of the press even, and the retribution he would take against them. It's decidedly un-American. It's a big story. And it's the critical backdrop to this moment in which Vice President Kamala Harris sat down for an interview with Fox News. It was supposed to give viewers an opportunity to actually hear her plans as president. Instead, as you saw, it almost immediately devolved into an embarrassing bad faith effort by a once respected host to play to an audience of one. The host's constant, rude interruptions were designed to distract from the issues and facts that Trump and his acolytes try and twist and distort every day. And on Fox News, they try and avoid and they couldn't. When Kamala Harris realized the host was not going to let her speak, the only way the vice president could give Fox viewers an opportunity to hear what she had to say was to talk back over him. Was he making sure that happened? I personally think absolutely. Did she do well in this environment? Of course, she was great.
Did y'all hear that? Did she win? There's a long pause. Of course she won. And you can tell by the way she said that even she does not believe that Kamala Harris won the debate. Everybody knows exactly what happened. I almost feel like I want to cry listening to them boo-hoo. And what do they always talk about with these libs? They always say something like, oh, she's not treated the same way Donald Trump is because she's a woman. They treat her differently. They don't show her the same respect. Folks, that's complete nonsense. Take a look at this clip from the ABC debate involving Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
You should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you?
Commentators on X slammed the vice president and the moderators after this clear bias. Kamala Harris tried to interrupt Trump after he called her out on supporting defund the police, despite this being against the debate rules. The moderators did not stop her. Instead, it was up to Trump to use her own line against herself.
14 or 15 different policies, like she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
The moderators have also been widely criticized for only fact-checking Donald Trump and not Kamala Harris. Muir also attempted to fact-check Trump on claims of animal cruelty in the immigrant community, which instantly backfired on him.
Verify here, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food.
Harris peddled the Charlottesville lie that was debunked by Snopes with absolutely no questioning by the moderator.
Isn't it interesting how they have a set of rules they agreed to, which were there was going to be no fact checking, yet the moderators clearly interrupted and fact checked President Donald Trump repeatedly. Clearly there's a bias, and of course Donald Trump was able to deal with it. Apparently Kamala Harris and her so-called supporters cannot. But the way they treat Donald Trump has always been extremely fierce and extremely unfair. Folks, we all know exactly what's going on, and that is they are lying to us directly to our faces each and every day and almost on every story. The gaslighting is unbelievable. So, my friends, the good news is this debate was terrible for Kamala Harris, and everybody was able to see her in all of her spectacular glory. She's not able to have an interview with what I would call a real journalist. She's not able to give an intelligent answer. She keeps basically filibustering, just blah, 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 trying to tie up and run out the clock on the gracious 20 minutes she allowed Fox News. So he had no choice but to try to interject himself into the conversation that they do with Donald Trump all the time, but they lie to you, telling you, oh, somehow she's treated differently because she's a woman. That's a bunch of nonsense. It's a crock, and you know it, and I know it. My friends, this election is going to be extremely consequential. The clock on the election is ticking by very fast. You need to make sure as soon as the polls in your area open that you get out and vote. Please vote early. Encourage your family and friends to vote. And if you have any indoctrinated friends suffering that terrible disease of indoctrination, please share this channel with them, share this video with them. Let them at least hear another point of truth so they can make up their own decisions one way or the other. It's extremely important we have uncomfortable conversations. This election is extremely important. I'm telling you, this is going to be the most consequential election in our lifetime. Folks, if you have any comments, whether you disagree or agree with me, please put them in the comments below. I love to answer each and every comment. Appreciate you joining me today. If you haven't done so already, you're still with me, might as well hit the thumbs up button. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. It helps the algorithm and helps push this message out to other individuals who might benefit from it. I always like to say, keep that mind free, never give up. Until next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.